The story begins on a spaceship where people are screaming loudly in pain and calling for help. Someone closed the door and many people who remained on the other side are screaming loudly for help. An unknown monster killed these people and the screams gradually began to subside. One of the corridors of this ship was completely captured and covered with unknown growths. A group of people walked along this corridor and stepped on these growths. One of these armed military men said that they were reporting to all units on board, they should gather in the captain's cabin. He pressed the display located on his hand and said that he was repeating the message to all units. One of them called the captain and the other asked, "Do they need to go there too?" They must ignore these instructions if they want to save others, they need to move according to the schedule. They must save as many human lives as possible, this is an order. They went further and the military man with number 1 looked around the corner and heard something unintelligible. They were getting closer and heard someone ask if there was anyone there. The soldiers continued to walk forward and looked around the corner. Number 1 was very surprised by what he saw there and asked with a shocked look what was that. They saw a room in which there was a huge pile of corpses stacked on top of each other. One of the soldiers was shocked by what he saw and number 1 turned to him and said that he had to control himself. They couldn't let their guard down and needed to find survivors faster. One of the soldiers heard someone ask if there was anyone there. He approached the pile of corpses and the man who was under the corpses asked to be pulled out of there. The soldier said that he had to wait a little. He was about to say something else but stopped when he saw something that surprised him very much. The monster that was hiding among the corpses showed its face, called for help and said that it was in a lot of pain. The soldier attracted the attention of his colleagues by loudly warning them about the monster. They all turned around at his voice, but they didn't have time to save him. The monster caught this soldier, killed him right away and looked at the others. The soldiers all immediately pointed their guns at this monster, and one of them said loudly that the enemy was on the horizon, opened fire. The monster jumped to the side and all the shots flew past him. He runs very fast and dodges all the shots. This monster scratched his hand with his claws and splashed out green blood. This acidic blood got on one of the soldiers and very quickly destroyed the military suit. Number 1 quickly ran towards the wounded soldier and loudly said that he should immediately administer the medicine. One of the soldiers shot another, and he fell to the ground. An unknown person said that when the emergency care is completed, they should go to the medical room. One of the soldiers who lost consciousness came to and saw the monster eating his colleague. He turned around, took some device that was lying nearby and was very scared because of what was happening. He dropped the device because a monster came up to him and grabbed his hand. The monster looked at the creature sitting on his shoulder and started hissing. The creature jumped to the ground in front of the soldier's face. It jumped onto the soldier's head and started eating away at his skin. At that moment, the monster started eating him. After that, the creature jumped onto the monster's shoulder again and made strange sounds. They went further and saw a closed door in front of them. The monster took the hand of one of the people and put it to the device. The answering machine said that this was an unregistered user. The creature picked up the item it had taken from a soldier it had recently killed. After that, the monster opened the door and saw 2 men screaming loudly out of fear. It walked towards the 2 frightened men and stretched out its hand to kill them. This monster eats all hostile alien creatures and grows indefinitely. The protagonist thought that in the middle of the vast space, in the cargo hold of a ship made of cold metal, and he had no choice but to admit that he had become a hostile alien creature in a sci-fi survival game. Space Survival is an RPG game in which you choose one of the various races that exist in the vast space in order to survive, explore and evolve. Sometimes he became a metal gremlin, fed on human ships, and sometimes he was a mutating monster, destroying enemies in ground battles, taking a leadership position in a group for collective battles and even attacking a planet. He played for all space creatures, as if they came out of nightmares, but there was one species to which he was most attached. Unidentified Aggressive Space Morph, abbreviated USM. He nicknamed this monster Amorphous. It is created in the image and likeness of a creature from one movie. It is a species that infinitely strengthens itself with the genetic information of its victims. At first glance, it looked like a scam, but due to the incredible difficulty of survival, the impossibility of dialogue and cooperation with others, it was the worst and unpopular race in the game. The reason why such a trash race became his favorite was very simple. It is a species that can freely evolve and become stronger. Depending on its choice and will, this is what attracted him. The protagonist appeared on the ship and a system window appeared in front of him, which said that his race is an unidentified hostile cosmic matter, the state of a cub, the goal is to survive, special skills are super sensitivity. He looked around and thought that now he understands what he looks like now. He scratched his head, remembered what he would look like if he evolved, and thought that he liked this kind of monsters. He began to look around and thought that there was not even a grain of meaning in these thoughts. The protagonist's body began to itch badly, and because of this he began to tumble on the floor. He shed his skin and thought that he didn't know that it would be accompanied by an itch. First, he needed to get some food because he was very hungry. He started walking around the room and thought that it was shaped like a mega corporation or a star union. If he got caught now, he would be killed immediately. He touched the wall and started using the super sensitivity skill. He started looking around at everything around him. He found what he needed and immediately headed to this place. He jumped onto a green container that was closed with a combination lock. The protagonist approached the panel and thought that he was very lucky that this was the password. He looked at the lock and wondered if they seriously had a password of 1234. He opened the container and saw a box with a lot of food. He took one of the chocolate bars and opened it to eat. He ate it and thought that it looked like he was chewing rubber, but he managed to feed himself somehow. He heard a cockroach run past him and hit him with its tail very quickly. He ate the insect and thought it was very tasty. A system window appeared in front of him, which said that the predator effect was activated. Successfully obtained genetic data wings. Stealing wings among the biological properties of the cockroach. Does he want to use it? The protagonist thought that he was lucky that he got the valuable gene so quickly. Gene number is the key element of the amorphous work. The more genetic information he gets, the stronger he becomes in return. He is able to evolve into stronger creatures. The protagonist looked at the system window and thought that wings are a good ability. He agreed to it, and immediately after that, a pair of wings appeared behind his back. He looked back and wondered how he should move it. Since the wings are on his back, it turns out that he should feel like he is moving the trapezius muscle. He decided to try and was able to fly to a small height. He was very tired because of this and immediately started eating chocolate bars. He thought that flying burned more calories than he thought. He looked down and saw several cockroaches running on the ground. Amorph thought that in order to use wings properly, one must have the necessary abilities. His first goal was already set. After that, he started hunting cockroaches and thought, this was already the 20th cockroach, but is there really no result? A system window appeared in front of him, and he noticed that he had obtained the chitinous shell skill. He thought that chitinous shell increased defense as the level increased. This was a good ability. He needed to ensure strong vitality characteristics, but it was not as easy as it seemed. Vitality is a characteristic that slows down aging by reducing energy consumption. This is especially characteristic of passive insects and plants. Characteristics significantly reduce the need to cling to food. The point is that if he wants to survive, he needs to catch more cockroaches. He jumped to another container and thought that he should try to change tactics. He flew into the air, saw 2 cockroaches and thought, so this is the majesty of the amorph? The amorph landed very quickly and caught one of these insects. He quickly ate this cockroach, noticed that the second one started to run away and thought that he would not let him get away. He ran very quickly after his prey, but this cockroach ran into a crack and because of this he crashed into the wall. He looked into this crack with a displeased look and stuck his tail in there. He hit the cockroach with his attack and immediately ate it. His attention was attracted by the fact that the system notified that the predator reaction was activated. Does he want to get the survivability skill? The amorph was happy and thought that of course he wants to get it. This skill was immediately activated and his body became stronger. He thought that the owners of this ship, the people, were his enemies. The vibration that he felt behind the wall, the barely perceptible noise of footsteps, suggested the idea that there was little time left. In order to avoid the gloomy future that was coming soon, it was necessary to pass the cub stage as soon as possible, and to do this, expand the scope of activities beyond the cargo bay. This was just the beginning. It was time to break through this cargo bay where he had taken his first steps. Where should he go after the cargo bay? He already knew the answer to this question. The amorph began to rise and thought that he would go to the refrigeration chamber next to the reactor. This was an important facility, so there would be a lot of visitors. If that didn't work out, he could break the reactor along with the refrigeration chamber and escape. He climbed into the ventilation and thought that he needed to go further. He looked at the fan, which was spinning at high speed, with a surprised look and thought that he was scared. With his claws, he unscrewed the screws and removed the grate. He stood in front of the fan and thought that if the fan was damaged, a message would immediately be sent to people, so he had no choice but to pass by, avoiding the blade at the right moment. It was time to rely on the abilities of the amorphous. Iron oxide mixed with air and small metal powder. The rotating blades wear out at a certain point in time and slow down a little. His brain, which analyzed all the information, tells him that it is time to do it right now. He quickly flew to the fan and thought that now it was all or nothing. The amorphous was able to fly past, and the screw was able to catch only the tip of his tail. He was very happy that he survived after that. He ran further along the ventilation and thought that he needed to see what would happen next. On the way, he found a spider, which he immediately decided to eat. He reached the exit of the ventilation and heard a conversation between two people who were asking what was going on with the result of experiment number 26. This experiment failed and the boss will be furious again. He is a newbie, there is nothing they can do about it because things are not going smoothly with the boss. They should end the conversation here. Amorph thought, is there an experimental lab here? Isn't this a regular ship? It seems that these are also supporters of the Mega Corporation. Mega Corporation is a group of people who thrive throughout the solar system. In short, it is a race based on the motives of Earth people. Instead of a government, the country is dominated by large corporations, most of whose members are materialists. Although many races in the game are neutral, but among them, the Mega Corporation is close to evil. This is the only place where a normal person is turned into a slave. When this happens in games, reality will appear in terrible colors. He climbed out through the ventilation and thought that he needed to see what they had today. He will change his course depending on what kind of research ship it is. A mutant soldier specializing in ground combat, a mutant research center. This will give him a strong body and fighting abilities. Where they experiment with the superpowers of the space elf cult, you can get a powerful psychedelic gift. Personally, he would like to be on the side of the cult, but this is too much to get psychedelic power from the very beginning. Amorph heard someone calling for help and wondered, does someone need help? He saw a bubble amoeba in a flask, which was calling for help. He looked at this creature and thought, the peculiarity of this creature is the conservation of oxygen. This is the most useless skill for him. He began to use his skill and wondered if he should look for a hint with the help of super sensitivity. He heard about what researchers were talking about electricity. Here it is. Judging by super sensitivity, if you press this, the experiment will end. Amoeba thanked him for helping him. Amorph thought that now she can live as she wants. He heard sounds, turned around and wondered, someone is coming here? He took off with a worried look and hid on a hill. Immediately afterwards, a girl walked into the room with a cat in her arms and asked when experiment 26 would be able to produce results. The man followed her and said that there was progress so far, but it needed a little more time. The girl turned around and said with a serious expression that time was money. The girl turned around and said with a serious look that time is money. If they couldn't achieve the desired result, the company might reconsider their employment and location here. The man asked her loudly with a worried expression that she shouldn't do that. The girl had made him very nervous by calling him senior researcher, Mr. Adiway. She walked up to the amoeba and said that of course she didn't want such results either. She was also looking forward to it from the senior researcher. If he could achieve this match with experiment 26, then the position of chief researcher would no longer be such a distant dream. Adiway asked with a worried voice, was she sure about that? The girl agreed and said at least a chief scientist if everything went well this time. Maybe they could collaborate with Mars. They were very interested in this project. Adiway asked how about moving on to Ionium. The girl turned to him and asked what he said. It was an awakening drug made by the Star Union, a drug they had never tried. Adiway was about to say something else but she didn't listen and said she had been going through all the ingredients and the only one left was Ionium. She agreed, they could act right away. Adiway was embarrassed by this and said if he didn't digest the neutralizer it would interfere with the life support system. The girl said this was a situation where the results of the study should have been known by now. He thought she should understand the seriousness of it. Adiway walked up to the keyboard, agreed and said he would do it. He would give him 0.01 milligrams first. He continued to increase the dose, stopped, and said that there was already a reaction at 0.07 milligrams. The girl came up to him and said that if there was a reaction, they could increase it even more, so he should inject everything he had. Adiway turned to her with a worried look and was about to say something about it. She went to the dashboard, pressed a button and said that he should move out of the way. Because of this, the amoeba began to feel very strong pain and began to loudly call for help. The girl watched with a smile as the amoeba suffered from pain. When the drug was finished being administered, she said that this was an interesting result. They needed more interaction with experiment 26. Adiwei asked if she was okay. She started to walk away and said that they should let her know if there were any significant results. She turned around abruptly and looked at the flasks with the other creatures. She did not see anything there and walked on. The Amorph was hiding behind one of the flasks and thought that she had just turned in his direction. He doesn't like all this. It's decided that she will die in a few days. After some time, the Amorph started spitting green liquid on the wall. He sat down on the floor and started using his ability. He closed his eyes and thought that every part of the ship felt like one whole with his body. He who owns information owns the world, and that's what he needs to win the war. He needs to find out where and what the enemies are doing and where to go. All information, including information about negotiations, is delivered to him through the liquid through all channels. On the 4th day of his life, his nest was ready. Having built the nest, he walked around the ship for several days between the nest and the cargo hold, catching and eating cockroaches and spiders, while managing to spy and collect information. He looked at the girl he saw earlier through the bars and thought that she came at the same time. Her name is Eugene Kisaragi. She is the head of the research team on this ship. Although she is weak in body, she is the most important figure on this ship and poses an immediate danger to him. There was an incident where one of the test subjects managed to escape. While the other researchers were confused, she managed to catch the test subject by creating a special tracking device in 2 hours. It is so strange, but at the same time so good for a human. Does she have the makings of a psychedelic power? It is a unique skill inherent in all races. A power similar to superpowers such as psychokinesis, telepathy, and mental control. However, it is very rare among humanity to find an individual born with psychedelic potential. Amorphous began to eat chocolate and thought that no matter her talent, this is a situation where armed soldiers are always right. How can he get there? A system window appeared in front of him, saying that he had obtained the skill Paralyzing Sting. Amorphous looked at it and thought that this was the perfect skill for weak him. With this, he could easily defeat at least one adult. The duration of the poison was 5 minutes, but this was enough. Anyway, he had to create a one-on-one situation to use the sting, but it was not easy, because the soldiers were always in sight. He doubted that he would get an answer if he just thought about it. What if he was given a chance? After some time, Amorphous came to the lab, and Amoeba noticed him, and said that she was glad to see him. He took out some chocolate bars and said that she seemed to be doing much better than yesterday, and he brought food again. He crumbled the chocolate and threw it into the flask. She said that it was very tasty. Amorphous looked at her and thought that the bubble amoeba did not have any special abilities in the game. She was the only one who was different, having simple features of another race. By the way, if you think about it, she raised her cat. And if you think about it some more, she has a lot of affection for that cat. If the cat dies, won't there be a loophole? Besides, he's not guarded like Kisaragi and he's alone in the room except when his owner calls him. It's decided, he'll try to catch the cat with bait. After a while, Amorphous looked at the cat through the vent and thought, his name is Caesar, right? That was the same name as that emperor. How can he not gain weight? After all, he only eats meat every day. Looking at this, Kisaragi is definitely an unusual person. It seems like it wouldn't be hard to kill the cat, because he looks stupid, but definitely not here. At the entrance to this vent, everything looks normal from the outside, but if you look at it with super sensitivity, you can see that it's completely covered in a laser grid. Even slightly touching it will set off an alarm. He got angry because of this, started beating his tail on the floor and thought that it was an ambush. This sound attracted Caesar's attention and he immediately ran to the ventilation, which scared the Amorphous very much. The cat hit the grate with his paws and because of this the alarm went off. The soldiers immediately entered the room and one of them loudly asked where these sounds were coming from. They turned around and saw the cat hitting the ventilation grate with his paws. They were confused because of this and asked, did this happen again? The Amorphous, looking very scared, was hiding to the side and was shaking because of fear. He thought that he could not believe that he had made such a mistake and attracted the cat's attention. He put together everything that had happened and thought with a smile that he had a plan. Some time later, when Caesar was sleeping on the bed, he heard the sound of blows and immediately woke up. He very quickly went to the ventilation and saw a cockroach there. He pushed the grate with his paw and was surprised when it opened. Caesar jumped inside and because of this the alarm went off. The soldiers who were standing at the door heard it, and one of them said that it was the cat again, they should get out of here. They heard sounds coming from the ventilation and asked where he was going. They had to protect him. Caesar continued to walk after the cockroaches that were lying all over the ventilation. After that, he went out into the room where the containers were. He climbed out of the ventilation to reach the last cockroach, and at that moment the Amorphous attacked him from the ceiling. After the attack on the cat, something happened that I, as a cat lover, cannot tell you about. After some time, Kisaragi entered the hall, and the scientists were very surprised when they saw her. She walked up to the bald man sitting in the center and greeted the captain. She asked with a very displeased look when she would see Caesar. He said that the soldiers were looking for him, she should be a little patient. Kisaragi slammed her hands on the table and said loudly that 2 hours had already passed. She looked at him with a very angry face and said that he was observing the eating regimen. Most likely something happened. The captain told the respected leader of the research group that he would repeat it again. They were on the ship. If the cat did not fly away on the rescue ship and did not escape, he should be somewhere here. Kisaragi said loudly that this is why she was telling them to find him right now. The captain calmly said that he meant that if she waited, everything would come to its senses. He wondered who this cat even was. He clenched his teeth hard because of anger and thought that if not noble capital, then he would put her in solitary confinement right now. Kisaragi looked at him with a very angry expression and asked what was wrong with the guards now. The captain said that they were all under arrest and that preventive measures would be taken. She surprised him by saying in a very angry voice that he should execute them now. His authority as a captain allows him to give orders right away, right? The captain said that it was too much anyway. If they were executed, the other soldiers would be outraged. Kisaragi leaned even closer with a very angry expression and asked what was wrong with that. The captain asked, after making progress in the search, was there any point in talking about punishment? Kisaragi said that it didn't mean anything. She felt like he was forgetting something. This all happened because the soldiers weren't working properly. The captain was confused by this, and said that they were fully aware of it. He would use this opportunity to discipline the soldiers. Kisaragi was still angry, but she shut up and stayed silent for a few seconds to calm down. She left and said that she would be back in 2 hours. She turned to him with an angry look and said that, however, if nothing worked out by then they had better leave the captain's position. The captain became very angry about this, slammed his fist on the table and asked where that cat could be. Amorph was watching what was happening from the ventilation and thought that Caesar was already in his stomach. He looked at the system window that appeared in front of him and wondered what kind of skill wild instinct was this. The skill influence system is a system that combines skills into one and enhances it. He used it so often that he memorized all the combinations in the game. He was speechless when he saw the notification window while eating his prey. He is an expert in games, but he has never seen anything like this before. The system notified that the wild instinct skill was used. Convergence with the existing skill's supersensitivity is possible. Due to the fusion of two skills, a new skill predator's sense was obtained. Based on the existing skill, threats can be detected in advance. Amorph thought that he tried to activate it because it was said that it detects danger. The extrasensory was much stronger than before, but the expected effect of predicting the future was not activated. Most likely it is a passive option that is used automatically, but while there is no threat, it has no effect. He wants to test it in the future. What is that woman doing there? Most likely, she is already out of her mind with anger. He reached the right room and saw Kisaragi, who with a very angry face said loudly that stabilization is taking too long. Amorph looked at her and thought that as expected, this is the type of person who treats the things that are dear to him with reverence. If they are deprived of it, they will lose control of themselves. The second goal was also achieved, which was the separation between her and the soldiers. This created a great discord between her and the guards, who did not like the cat to begin with. They use the best meat that they can even eat as cat food 3 times a day, so a normal person would naturally get angry. In general, everything is simpler than it seems. There was anger at belonging to a class. Kisaragi belongs to the upper class in the megacorporation noble capital. The soldiers who were forced to obey without question were afraid of the consequences of directly protesting against her, and in the end they chose a cat as a scapegoat to vent their anger. In other words, the cat acted as a shield. What if the scapegoat disappeared in this situation? What if they had to go through the trouble of finding the creature they hated so much? Would the soldiers be able to protect her like before? That's not all. Kisaragi had lost trust in her soldiers. She had lost the most precious thing in her life due to the guards' negligence. It was time to appropriate this girl's genetic data. Kisaragi continued to be angry about the loss and began to take it out on the experimental monsters and shock them. She walked further into the lab and said that it was all because of her. She approached the amoeba and said with an angry face that if you think about it, she was there too. A cruel smile appeared on her face, and she launched the ionium into the flask again, causing the amoeba to scream loudly in pain. She calmed down a bit and left the lab. The Amorphous looked at what was happening with a displeased look and said nothing. The amoeba surprised him by noticing him and saying she was glad to see him. The Amorph looked at her waving the appendage at him and said nothing. He walked away and thought with a thoughtful look that they couldn't talk now. Instead of a few words of comfort, he would give her what she really needed, which was revenge. Kisaragi came into the room again and said that 2 hours had passed. How was the search going? The captain calmly said that they were going to start searching. He asked her to wait a little longer. Kisaragi clenched her teeth hard and was about to call him captain, but changed her mind and called him Yusen Samuel. She looked at him with a crazy look and asked if he was really defying the will of the noble capital. He tried to remain calm and told the head of the research team that he was the captain of this ship, she should watch her words. Kisaragi looked at him and said that she could help him resign as captain. Samuel said that even in the noble capital, abuse of authority was unacceptable. He has the right to detain her. Kisaragi was very surprised by this and asked loudly, "Does he seriously think that he can detain her?" Samuel said that the captain has the right to detain a troublemaker. She asked loudly, "Has he completely lost his mind?" Amorph looked at this and thought that everything was turning out very funny. It seemed that there was a conflict between them even before his intervention. Kisaragi could not think of what to say, turned around and left. She walked down the corridor with 2 soldiers with a very angry expression on her face. She went towards the toilet and said that she was going to use the toilet for a short while. She closed the door behind her, and one of the soldiers said that he was going too. Amorph ran through the ventilation and thought that now was the right moment. Initially, one guard was supposed to follow her, but he did not go because he had been suffering all day. Besides, the second guard also went to the toilet, which means that she was left alone and there is no security system to prevent him from passing. There simply could not be a better moment. He looked behind the bars and saw Kisaragi standing at the sink and thought that he couldn't miss this opportunity. The Amorphous crawled inside and onto the wall behind her. He climbed up to the ceiling and slowly made his way towards her. Kisaragi finished washing her face and took a deep breath. Suddenly, she heard sounds that caught her attention and scared her. She turned around and was very surprised when she saw the Amorphous flying towards her, swinging his tail. Kisaragi stepped aside and his blow flew past. The Amorphous clung to the wall and turned sharply towards her. He jumped back sharply and hit her with a blow from his tail. Kisaragi screamed loudly because she felt a lot of pain from the poison. The veins on her face started to pop out, and she clenched her teeth very hard. She fell to the ground and looked at the liquid that was falling next to her with a frightened look. She raised her head and saw an amorphous creature, who was looking at her with a smile and drooling. He was about to bite her, and wondered what she was thinking about now. Was she afraid of what she saw? Was she angry at what was happening, or was she afraid of death? However, this no longer made sense, because her death was inevitable. He bit her, and at the same moment he felt how her genetic information, obtained from the blood through the stomach, through the blood vessels, and it reached his brain. Then he realized that one of the guesses contained in his subconscious was correct. The system notified that the conditions for evolution from a cub to an individual were met. Does he want to evolve? The amorphous creature, stained with blood, looked at her with a joyful look and thought that he had waited for this. He was about to confirm this and suddenly saw a premonition in which a soldier entered the toilet and killed him. The amorphous creature was very surprised by what he had just seen and was dumbfounded by it. He thought with a frightened look, what just happened? So this is a predator's sense, so that's how it works. It turns out that a guard will arrive soon, maybe he should run away from here? He started to crawl away and thought that he didn't have time for this, he would have to kill him. Right after that, a soldier entered the toilet, who was very surprised because he saw Kisaragi's corpse lying on the floor. When he came closer, the amorph attacked him from behind and the soldier asked what happened here. He jumped on the guard's shoulder, and he suddenly turned to him. The amorph delivered a quick blow with his tail to the man's head and killed him immediately. He left the guard's corpse lying on the ground and quickly ran in the other direction. The amorph opened the ventilation grill and thought that he didn't know when another soldier would show up, so he needed to hurry. There was a chance that he didn't even know about some kind of tracking means, so he would walk around for a bit and then go to the nest. After some time, the amorph returned to his nest and used his skill. He started looking around and thought that everything seemed to be clear. He clicked on the system window with evolution and thought that it was time to start. The system notified that the process of evolution to an individual was activated. Immediately after that, his body began to change very quickly and he lost consciousness. He found himself in a shell and thought that this was an amazing feeling. The memories of an embryo would look exactly like this, feeling like a completely different creature. The mucus is grinding something different out of him. He wants to open his eyes and see how it happens, but he can't. Control over the body is lost, because now he is in a cocoon. He did everything he could and now all that remains is to wait. After some time, the cocoon began to collapse and the amorph began to crawl out. He stood up, looked at his hand and moved his fingers. He raised his head and let out a very loud scream. At the same time, Samuel was sitting in the hall with a serious look and asked the head of the medical team, had he already determined the cause of death? The manager looked at him with a worried expression, agreed and said that